way. It's really difficult. Yeah, because we booked that time slot months ago.
Sailors guys are giving the fire
tomorrow afternoon, that's right. Well, there was only the final when you were there. Yeah, that's right. Last night I went to Bishop's and they gave me a free meal. And I said, gee, if I know you're going to do this, I'd brought the lamb.
In this room, so I'm going to make these really short. Okay. We're really proud of you. Remembrance Department, you did your work here, and you set a wonderful example to us all. You set the university at the forefront of people's attention right now. And so all we can say is, well done, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I don't have a speech. I've been so busy talking to...
You said that yesterday in Hanover.
Pardon? Oh, is that ours? Oh, you do, right, I see. And so anyway, but Phil said something that is really dear to my heart. I mean, I've been a member of this department since 1966, and it's really... I should give you a little history, because I think it's important for young people to understand this. I came here by chance. I didn't plan my life in that sense, and I really had the ambition. I'm a chemist by training, and it's kind of ironic. Most of us consider this what we do in biology rather than chemistry. The Nobel Prize should be in chemistry. It relates to my professional degree, and I'm, like a number of people, practicing biochemistry without a license most of my life. I really, the reason I'm here is pure luck. I'm a chemist, and I thought, like most chemists who got the PhD in England, where there's hundreds of them churned out, that were going to work for the chemical industry, Imperial Chemical Industries or Glaxo. But it was very fashionable in the mid 1950s, and maybe so now, that you came to North America, and you really didn't view it like you do a postdoc as an extension of your training. It was actually a year off before you settled down to life back in Billingham or wherever it was you're going to work in the northeast of England, and so most people wrote to labs where they were doing something the same as they did the PhD on and things like that. And whereas I hope you guys try and go to labs where you're doing something completely different from what you did your PhD and so forth. And I wrote to a bunch of labs. I was a stereochemist doing stereochemistry. So I wrote to labs in Seattle, Hank Dorman, and I've forgotten people in Berkeley and Stanford and UCLA and Boulder. I didn't get any positive answers from the West Coast, and I thought I got a postdoc offer from Boulder, Colorado, with a man called Crispell, who was a mechanistic guy. And then I found out in May of the year I was finishing my PhD in the fall that there wasn't one there. And so I was really at a loose end. All my friends had got postdocs, and I didn't have one. I really didn't know what I was going to do, and I was by then flat broke, because in England totally dependent on scholarships. And I actually arrived in Vancouver. I'm going ahead, I think, with $5 in my pocket, and I remember having to go to Gordon Schrum, who was director of the BC Research Council, where I was working, and asking for an advance on my first month's salary so I could survive. And but anyway, to go back. And so what happened, one of my colleagues who was working on sugar chemistry in Manchester's grad student knew a Corona, because Corona had started doing some very exciting work. In fact, it wasn't Corona, it was a certain person who's in this room called Gordon Tenner, who had done some exciting work on synthesis of ribose 1-alpha phosphate, and this chap had been trying to do the same synthesis, and Gordon had beaten him to it. And so he'd written to Gobind, and Gobind had offered him a postdoc at the then NRC rate, NRC postdoc, not NSERC postdocs, of $3,200 a year, tax-free. And at the same time, he'd written to a very senior carbohydrate chemist who's really past his peak, called Wolfram, who was at Ohio State. And Wolfram offered this friend of mine a postdoc at $3,800 a year. And so he accepted the one there, and I immediately wrote to Corona and said, I understand you may have a postdoc. And he wrote back and said, yes, he did. And the director of the institute was going to be in England, and I should go for an interview. And his director was called Gordon Schrum. And of course, I didn't know who Gordon Schrum was, and so I went down to British Columbia House on Lower Regent Street in London and met this elderly, rather benign man. and he interviewed me, and I remember writing him a panically a letter after it because I thought I hadn't made a good impression and so forth, and saying I really did want this postdoctoral fellowship to work in Corona's lab. I got a note back from him saying, yes, you got the fellowship, and so I came to be here. And so that was totally unplanned. And then what happened to me when I left Corona's lab in 1961, nobody wanted to hire people synthesizing oligonucleotides, and by and large biochemistry departments didn't think Corona's chemistry was all that interesting, and the chemists tend to think polymer chemistry to be a bit repetitive and boring, and they're not interested. So I ended up working at the Fisheries Research Board laboratory, which used to be on the campus. It's a building where food science is on Marine Drive now, federal government lab, and started working with students. One of my students, my first graduate student, in fact, was Dina Wilson, who's recently retired as a faculty member in physiology, and one of my earliest other students who worked down there was Carolyn Astel. Anyway, and things deteriorated down there, and the then head of this department had said to me, if you've ever got a problem down there, come and see me. And so I knocked on his door one day and said, I've got a problem down there. I'm here to see you. And so the net result of that was the university applied to the MRC for what was called an associateship in those days, and now called a career investigatorship, and is a program that's discontinued, but they still might pay my salary, and they paid Gordon's salary, and they paid Charles Beer's salary too. We were all three funded under the same program. And I came up here, and so again, that was pure luck, you know. And that's one of the things I'd like to say. One is pure luck. And then the other thing, I was lucky to, in another way, have very good people in my lab. I mentioned Dina and I've mentioned Carolyn, and there's been a succession of people in the lab over the years, and that's really nice. And that's one of the wonderful things about being here. You do get very, very good students and good postdoctoral fellows to come to work in your lab. And it's on all you people that things such as Nobel Prizes and your efforts are built, and I think that's something to bear in mind. And the other thing is that since this was my home where everything was carried out, I'm very appreciative of it, and although I've moved on into other activities in recent years across the way there, but my heart lies in this department more than anywhere. And I should tell you, we started off in an abysmal situation here. They were building, not this wing, the other wing, and I was put in a lab in the basement, which was 400 square feet. Those of you who come here and think you've not got enough space when you first started, I was put in a lab which was 400 square feet, which was my office and my lab, and immediately next door they were doing the constructing and sandblasting for the labs, which are the ones that have been remodeled for you now, and where Peter Candido is. And every night, every morning we came in, the place was just covered in dust, so we had to cover all the equipment up, the spectrometers, everything with plastic every night, because there was a pile of dust, and all day there were pneumatic drills going, and we managed to survive that first year down there, amazingly enough.
But you got an office eventually.
Pardon?
You got an office eventually.
Right, yes, and then I got an office on the top floor, so I got an office on the top floor and my lab in the basement. That went on for quite a while too. That was another added convenience. So I got fit running up and down stairs. And so that's it. But beyond that, the one thing I hope you take home the message I've said to a number of people, I hope this convinces you and any other Canadians that you can make a career in Canada and you can do research here that's as good as any research in the world, and get the recognition of your peers throughout the world. And I think it's a very important message for young Canadians to get, and I do think it's also a very important message for politicians and bureaucrats who decide on science policy and how much money is given out. And if one of the things that can come out of that is both those groups, the young people and the administrators and bureaucrats, get that message and react to it, then I think it would please me more than anything else. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say. Yeah, fine, I think.
You said the truth. Everything Mike said just now is correct. Because I was here to listen to it and watch it develop. And as one of the old timers who's long left the department, I just want to say, Mike, I'm very, very proud of you. I feel good because you made my prediction come true. I was talking to someone who you also know many years ago, and when I said this work looks like Nobel Prize work, and doggone, she didn't do it.
Well, I guess somebody had to nominate you. Maybe you nominated me.
No, I didn't do it. Many many people in the world did nominate you, and by golly, they're absolutely correct. And I'm glad that you left that message for the younger people. Who often feel so discouraged. In Canada, I think things are better elsewhere. But a lot of the work done in Canada is Nobel Prize work, and we've just proved it. What else can I say? We're just absolutely thrilled. I may it happen to all of you.
I got a letter from a certain Kim Campbell today saying, congratulations, and I know you live in my constituency. And one other thing I thought, I should have mentioned another name, and that is Shirley Gillam. And Shirley, I guess, isn't here, but she also, because she was the person who did the experiment for which the work that grew out of work that Carol Maxwell started, and other people, and but principally Shirley continued, and she actually did the crucial experiments that showed you could use oligonucleotides to be mutagens, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person, and of course, those of you who know her know she's a professor in the Research Institute at the Children's Hospital in town, and I owe an enormous amount to both her and Carolyn. Carolyn took on an impossible task and made it into a PhD thesis, which a lot of people wouldn't have done. And,
Okay, why don't we eat and drink then? Some wine behind the
or as Mr. Harcourt said, let's
I like the suit. Yeah, I like the suit. We managed to find actually a room after just one night we realised that I think it was not too far from the house, it was ready to go in Paris because we had somebody else. So we went to the sort of people in the street that advertise for housing.
Where's the
It's changing very fast.
This is taking us behind BC Research.
People perceive that
I'm a UBC department.